Hello friends, in the today's class we'll talk about the disease schizophrenia. We'll study what exactly is schizophrenia, its symptoms, phases of the disease, diagnosis, and the most important of all, pathophysiology of schizophrenia. Now, as you can see in the slide, schizo refers to split and phrenia refers to mind. That means person is split off from the reality. Person is unable to differentiate between real and unreal. So it is a psychiatric disorder. It is a type of psychosis. It affects about 1% of population. It affects male in the age group of 15 to 25, while female are normally affected in the age group of 25 to 35 years. Now, talking about the symptoms of schizophrenia, symptoms are broadly categorized into three categories: positive symptoms, negative symptoms, and cognitive symptoms. Now, positive symptoms are the changes of behavior. These are the changes of behavior or the behavior that is not seen in the normal population. So, there is abnormal behavior. So, positive symptoms constitute the abnormal behavior. Now, the symptoms under the positive symptoms are delusions. Delusions refers to strongly held false beliefs. Then hallucinations. Hallucinations are the false perceptions. These are the false sensations. These false sensations can be visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, or tactile. Next important cardinal feature is the disorganized speech. There is word salad. There is no link between the thoughts and the speech. Then catatonic behavior. Now, it is exhibited as reduction in the physical movement, and the movements are reduced to such an extent that voluntarily the movements they completely stop, and therefore it is referred to as catatonic stupor. Now, coming to the negative symptoms. Now, negative symptoms are the absence of or diminished normal behavior. So, there is reduction or there is reduced normal behavior, or there is complete absence of normal behavior. Now, under the negative symptoms, we have affective flattening. This refers to blank and restricted facial expressions, flat voices. There is no voice modulation. Then alogia. This is a difficulty or inability to speak. Then anhedonia asociality. Anhedonia asociality refers to the inability to experience pleasure from the activities that are actually enjoyable. So, the affected individual is not able to experience that pleasure. Social withdrawal. Person doesn't want to enjoy the social gathering, or the person remains isolated. And low energy. There is always lack of energy. Cognitive symptoms are the abnormal thought processes, disorganized slow thinking, there is poor memory, inability to concentrate, inability to judge, inability to plan and organize, and the person becomes, the person is not able to make any decision also. So, all these symptoms are the cognitive symptoms. Now, we will talk about the positive symptoms of schizophrenia in some detail. Delusions, as we have already discussed, these are the strongly held false beliefs, and the person, affected individual, is extremely suspicious, or the individual is afraid of other people. Now, these delusions can be of many kinds or many types. Like for example, delusion of control. Here the affected individual thinks that the beliefs, that the thoughts are inserted from outside. That is, some external force is controlling the thoughts and actions of the affected individuals. Now it can be the delusion of reference. Now the affected individual feels that he or she is being referred or targeted, and neutral messages are perceived as personal messages, and the affected individual feels that these personal messages are being communicated through TV, SMS, WhatsApp, social media. So this is the delusion of reference. Then delusion of persecution. Here the affected individual feels that the people they want to hurt him, or the people they want to harm him, or the society is behind the life of affected individual. That is the delusion of persecution. Then delusion of grandeur. Here the affected individual feels that he or she is a superpower, like Lord Krishna, like Jesus Christ, a famous rock star, a singer, something like that. So these are all strongly held false beliefs which are not actually present. Then hallucinations. These are the false perceptions. Actually there are no perceptions, there are no sensations, but these false perceptions are perceived by the affected individuals. And these false perceptions, they can be visual, where the affected individual sees things that are not seen by other individuals or by the other population. These perceptions can be auditory, where the affected individual hear voices that are not heard by other people. They can be olfactory, that is something unusual smell. These perceptions can be gustatory, that is unusual taste, or the person is unable to taste anything. These perceptions can be tactile, that is sensory feeling, that something is biting or something is moving on the skin. So these false perceptions are of different types. Then the third cardinal feature, or the third very important positive symptom, is the disorganized speech. As I have already discussed, this is a word salad. There is no link in the thoughts and speech, and it is found that many a times a person keeps repeating same sentence or the same word again and again purposeless. This is all purposeless. The person cannot find a link in the thoughts and the speech. Then catatonic behavior. This is a reduction in the physical movement, and the physical movements are reduced to a point that the voluntary movements are completely stop. That is, the body movement they completely stop, and this is referred to as catatonic stupor. Now we'll talk about the phases of schizophrenia. Now when we talk about the phases of schizophrenia, there are three phases: prodromal or the beginning phase, acute or the active phase, and recovery or the residual phase. Now these phases, they tend to occur in an order and cycle throughout the course of schizophrenia. Now first we'll talk about the prodromal phase. Now this prodromal phase is the beginning phase. Now here no cardinal symptoms are seen. Non-psychotic symptoms are however observed. Now this phase, it may last from months to about 5 years, and childhood signs could be cognitive, motor and social impairment. As the individual reaches adolescence, anxiety and depressive symptoms are seen. At early adulthood, individual becomes socially withdrawn. The prodromal phase is followed by the acute or the active phase. Now here in the active phase, symptoms are full blown, and the major symptoms are delusions, hallucinations and disorganized speech. It occurs in the age group of 15 to 45 years in male and 20 to 50 years in female. Now this active phase where all the major cardinal symptoms are seen, and it is recognized that the individual is mentally sick. This acute or the active phase is followed by the recovery or the residual phase. Now, in the recovery or the residual phase, symptoms no longer remain prominent. There is impaired interpersonal functioning and impaired relationship to the external world. There is reduced volition, that is power to make decision. And as I've already said, these phases, they tend to occur in an order and cycle throughout the course of schizophrenia. Next, we'll talk about the diagnosis of schizophrenia. This slide talks about the diagnosis of schizophrenia. As we have already discussed, important symptoms of or the cardinal symptoms of schizophrenia are delusion, hallucination, disorganized speech, catatonic behavior. And apart from positive symptoms, negative symptoms like affective flattening, social withdrawal, then lack of emotions, low energy, alogia, already we have discussed. Now, as per the DSM-5, that is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder, 5th edition DSM-5, 2 of the following 5 symptoms, that means 2 of the following 5 symptoms must persist for a significant portion of time during a 1-month period since the onset of disturbance. And out of these 2 symptoms, one of the symptoms should be either delusion or hallucination or disorganized speech. So, as per DSM-5, 2 of the following 5 symptoms are required, and at least one of the symptoms must be either delusion or hallucination or disorganized speech. And any one of these 3 symptoms, that is delusions or hallucinations or disorganized speech, must persist for a significant portion of time during a 1-month period since the onset of disturbance. Now, apart from this, constant signs of schizophrenia should persist for at least 6 months, and active symptoms refers to delusions, hallucinations and disorganized speech. So, constant symptoms of schizophrenia should persist for at least 6 months and active symptoms for at least 1 month. This slide talks about the pathophysiology of schizophrenia. Dopamine, a neurotransmitter, plays a very important role in the pathophysiology of schizophrenia. We'll talk about the dopaminergic pathways. There are 4 dopaminergic pathways, and we'll talk about all these 4 dopaminergic pathways one by one. First pathway is the mesolimbic pathway. Now, this is the diagram. This diagram shows the brain and the brain stem. Now, the mesolimbic pathway. This mesolimbic pathway, it projects from ventral tegmental area to the nucleus accumbens. This mesolimbic pathway I have shown here in the blue color, and it extends from the ventral tegmental area to the nucleus accumbens. And this mesolimbic pathway is found to be overactive in schizophrenia. Overactivity of mesolimbic pathway is responsible for the positive symptoms, that is the delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech are mainly because of the overfunctioning of mesolimbic pathway. Second dopaminergic pathway is the mesocortical pathway. Mesocortical pathway I have shown here in the red color. This mesocortical pathway, it extends from ventral tegmental area to the prefrontal cortex. This in the red color is the mesocortical pathway. And this mesocortical pathway is found to be hypofunctional in schizophrenia. And hypofunctioning of mesocortical pathway is responsible for the negative and cognitive symptoms of schizophrenia. Third dopaminergic pathway is the nigrostriatal pathway. Nigrostriatal pathway is shown in the blue color, and it extends from the substantia nigra to the striatum. This is the nigrostriatal pathway, and this nigrostriatal pathway, it controls and it coordinates the body movements. This is responsible for the dopamine in this nigrostriatal pathway controls and coordinates the body movement. And the fourth dopaminergic pathway is the tuberoinfundibular pathway. This tuberoinfundibular pathway I have shown in the red color, and this is present in the hypothalamus. Now here the dopamine inhibits the release of prolactin. In the tuberoinfundibular pathway, dopamine inhibits the release of prolactin, and prolactin further regulates the sexual activity of the body, and that is a sexual desire of the body, and it also regulates the immune system. So these are the four main dopaminergic pathway, and hyperactivity of mesolimbic pathway is responsible for the positive symptoms of schizophrenia, and hypofunctioning of mesocortical pathway is responsible for the negative and cognitive symptoms of schizophrenia. So this is all about the pathophysiology of schizophrenia. Thanks for watching the video.